New analysis now of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill as it heads to the Senate floor after passing the House by one vote this week. So take a look at this chart. That longest line there is how much the bill would increase income for the wealthiest 0.1% of Americans, while actually reducing income for the poorest 10%. This is according to Penn's Wharton School of Business. It also would drastically raise the deficit, and that's putting some Republicans on edge.
This will be the greatest increase in the debt ceiling ever, and GOP owns this now.
Senator, some of your House colleagues said the same thing, that they're not going to support the bill because it adds too much to the deficit, but then they ended up voting for it. Do you think the president could put pressure on you and others?
I'm not persuadable to go against the principles of conservative government.
Michael Hardaway and Brendan Buck are back with me. So welcome, guys. Michael, we're going to get to the Senate battle in just a moment. But first, what is your initial reaction to this bill getting through the House in the middle of the night by one vote? Were you surprised at the number of Republicans that were persuaded to sign on to this level of Medicaid cuts?
What a disaster. You know the bill is bad when they hold all of these meetings in the dead of night. I think that, the fact that several Republicans who claim to have issues with the bill ultimately surrendered is not surprising. I think that what Rand Paul just said is interesting because if he's telling the truth, he'd be one of a few deficit hawks left in the Republican Party. You've got a $36 trillion national debt that no one seems to care about anymore, and that is incredibly problematic for the future of this country.
Brendan, this bill raises the deficit by $2 to $3, almost $4 trillion, depending on the estimate you're looking at. If it passes, have Republicans lost any right to complain about the deficit, or has that already been kicked off the GOP platform? I mean, it was there with traditional Republicans, those that preceded the era of Donald Trump, but are they there now?
I feel the need to put this in a little bit of context. So we're talking about very expensive tax cuts. In reality, these are an extension of what people are already paying. And I think we've talked about this before. While Donald Trump talks about this as the biggest tax cut in history, for most people, it is just keeping your tax rates the same. Now, there is a cost to that. Of course, the law expects the tax rates for everybody to go up, and therefore we're not getting all of that revenue. I think what's important to point out here is it was also the position of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to extend almost all of these tax cuts. And so when we talk about there being a $3 or $4 trillion increase to the deficit, while legitimate, and I think we should talk about that, I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for Democrats throwing their hands up in there and saying this is terrible when their policy was to extend the vast majority of that. And maybe it was $1 trillion generously that they were going to allow to expire, but they certainly weren't going to try to offset it. So I think if Democrats were in charge, we would have probably the exact same deficit number. Now, should we be more concerned about the deficit? Yes, I do personally do work on fiscal responsibility and think that we should take this a lot more seriously. And that's one of my frustrations with the party is everyone's going after Medicaid because they're so unwilling to make any tough decisions on other programs like Medicare and Social Security that need reform. And we end up in a situation where they are understandably, I think, extending the tax cuts, which have a cost, but have nowhere to look for offsets other than Medicaid, which is just a terrible political dynamic. Because as you said, the way that this ends up playing out for especially the lower income people is just really bad. So I just want to get that off my chest. And this is a bipartisan problem that we've had for many, many years.
Fair. So, Michael, the bill has to pass the Senate where it faces a bit of a math problem. There's room for 3 Republicans to vote no and then still have that bill pass. But right now, we have numerous GOP senators who have problems with it. You have Josh Hawley, doesn't want to cut the Medicaid benefits for his constituents. 4 Republicans don't want to axe the clean energy tax credits. And then there were a few Republicans, again, like we heard Rand Paul there, who thinks it doesn't cut enough and it adds too much to the deficit. Can Democrats exploit these conflicts, or will Senate Republicans fall in line like their House colleagues did? You heard my colleague Julie Sirkin asking that question of Rand Paul.
I think Democrats should exploit this. I don't think they will. And I do think ultimately that handful of Senate Republicans will surrender and they'll kowtow to this. The reality is that, for instance, the SALT tax and raising that is needed because blue states pay more money into the Treasury that keeps this country running than do red states in the South. That is a fact. It is also a fact that you need these clean energy tax credits to help America win the future. we should protect those things. But I think ultimately Senate Republicans will surrender to Donald Trump as they typically do, and we'll have these horrific cuts for Medicaid and elsewhere. It's a shame, too, because the reality is that Medicaid is wildly popular and necessary. 97% of Americans say that they are affected by Medicaid or they know someone that is. And the overwhelming majority of those people are either working or cannot work. You only have about 6 to 7% of people on Medicaid who are able-bodied and don't work. And so there is no reason to attack Medicaid except, grandmas who need Medicaid don't have lobbyists. And that's why we have this.
Brendan, what changes might we see to this bill before it can get through the Senate?
I don't think a lot. Michael said they're going to surrender to Trump. I think they're probably just going to surrender to reality. There were a lot of Republicans in the House who wanted to do different things, wanted to cut spending deeper, wanted changes in tax policy. And this is just really, I think, the equilibrium. Now, will they tinker around on Medicaid? Will they tinker around on some of those green tax credits? Maybe. But there just certainly isn't $5 trillion of spending cuts like Senator Ron Johnson said he wants that you can find that have the votes. So I think they will probably, once they've sort of been on the sidelines, and once they take a closer look at it, I think they'll realize there isn't a whole lot of room to go. And so there's not a real reason to delay this. So I think they're going to vote relatively quickly. And I think with the House passed, it'll look very similar to the final piece of legislation.
Quick before I let you go, I would love both of you to just comment on the crypto dinner Thursday night at Donald Trump's Virginia Golf Club. First to you, Michael, as you shake your head.
What a scam. I mean, the reality is that the president of the United States is setting the national and really the global framework for how crypto will be regulated. His family members also have a crypto company of which he is part owner, and he can take anonymous contributions from anyone, anywhere in the world. Some people would call those bribes. I wouldn't. I would just say that this seems to be problematic for America. And I think Republicans should be outraged. That's what the House of Representatives and the United States Senate is for, which is oversight hearings to make sure that the executive branch is operating properly. This is obviously a scam, and it hurts America. And so the idea that Republicans control Congress and they're choosing to do nothing about it is shameful.
Brendan, last word to you. I mean, they said, hey, this was done in the president's personal time. Does the president of the United States ever have personal time like that when you're standing behind the presidential seal and it's been the whole evening's been billed as an event to meet with the president of the United States?
I mean, it's hard not to call this grift. And most presidents, most elected leaders go to great lengths to even avoid the appearance of some type of conflict of interest. And the president in this case is just so out in the open. This is the type of thing that I think in any other normal world would be a scandal for the centuries. And it seems like there's so much that goes on, and they seem so lacking of any shame that we all just sort of, it brushes over us without the normal type of scrutiny that it would get. But yeah, this is using the office of the presidency to benefit your family, perhaps, but they'll ultimately flow back to you in ways that I think were incomprehensible in recent, just a few years ago.